Malthusian Time and the Death of Idleness. A medieval peasant would likely find the modern office worker insane, not because the office worker labors harder, but because he rarely ceases laboring psychologically. The peasant endured brutal physical exertion, disease, poor harvests, and primitive medicine, yet he also inhabited a world where idleness still existed as a recognizable state of being. Winter imposed stillness. Darkness imposed stillness. Distance imposed stillness. Slowness itself imposed stillness. And the modern individual, by contrast, inhabits a civilization that increasingly regards uninterrupted cognitive occupation as normal. This is one of the first great symptoms of Malthusian time. The crisis is not merely that people work too much. Human beings have always worked. The crisis is that the boundary between labor and non-labor begins dissolving under conditions of infinite informational availability. The mind itself becomes permanently economically exposed. A Roman merchant could leave the forum. A farmer could leave the field. A blacksmith could extinguish the forge, but the smartphone follows its owner into bed. This changes civilization at a level deeper than many political commentators appreciate. The modern economy increasingly extracts value not only from productive action but from attention itself. Every notification represents a potential claim upon consciousness. Every vibrating device is a tiny declaration of psychological jurisdiction. Something, somewhere, demands acknowledgement. Observe the peculiar language of the digital age. Platforms speak of engagement, retention, active users, screen time, reach, impressions. These terms sound harmlessly technical until one realizes they are describing the management and harvesting of human lifespan. The individual no longer merely sells labor, he leaks attention continuously. This produces an entirely new relationship with idleness. Historically, idleness was often condemned morally because idle populations could become disorderly, decadent, or rebellious. Yet paradoxically, most pre-modern societies still contain large quantities of involuntary silence and temporal emptiness simply because technology had not yet conquered interruption. Today, civilization officially celebrates leisure while simultaneously engineering its annihilation. One may object immediately and say, surely modern people possess more leisure than any generation in history. Objectively speaking, this is often true. The average worker possesses comforts unimaginable to ancient kings. Entertainment is abundant beyond measure. Entire libraries fit within pockets. Music arrives instantly. Films stream endlessly. One may speak across continents in seconds. Yet, this abundance conceals a darker transformation. Leisure increasingly ceases to restore. The ancient distinction between rest and stimulation collapses. A man returns home exhausted from work only to submit himself voluntarily to 6 consecutive hours of algorithmically curated psychological agitation masquerading as relaxation. Infinite scrolling is experienced as rest, despite often leaving the individual more mentally fragmented than before he began. This is because the nervous system evolved under conditions radically different from modern informational density. Human attention was shaped within environments where novelty remained relatively scarce. A rustling bush really mattered. An unfamiliar face really mattered. Sudden movement really mattered. The modern attention economy industrializes novelty itself. Millions of individuals now awaken each morning into an environment specifically engineered to trigger orienting responses continuously. News feeds, short-form videos, notifications, outrage cycles, adverts, breaking news banners, recommendation systems, and social comparison loops all compete simultaneously for finite cognitive bandwidth. The result resembles a kind of psychological overpopulation. Too many informational organisms occupy the same mental ecosystem. Malthusian time, as I call it, emerges precisely here. Thomas Malthus observed that finite systems collapse under exponentially expanding demands. Modern consciousness increasingly experiences precisely this condition. The demands need not be physical, they may be informational, emotional, economic, social, or symbolic. The principle remains unchanged. A man with 10 obligations experiences pressure. A man with 10,000 possible obligations experiences paralysis. Modernity quietly transformed possibility itself into a burden. Consider the peculiar exhaustion produced by contemporary life. Many individuals are not physically ruined. They are cognitively saturated. Their fatigue resembles neither the clean exhaustion of the laborer nor the victorious weariness of achievement. Instead, it possesses an oddly spectral quality. They feel permanently occupied, yet uncertain what exactly has consumed them. This confusion emerges because attention is now fragmented into microscopic temporal units. The smartphone, in particular, shattered duration itself. Human beings increasingly struggle to sustain uninterrupted contact with any single activity for meaningful periods of time. Reading becomes difficult, prayer becomes difficult, deep conversation becomes difficult, solitude becomes intolerable, even entertainment fragments into secondary stimulation. Films play while phones glow simultaneously in the viewer's hands. One observes the terrifying possibility that civilization may be approaching a condition where uninterrupted consciousness itself becomes culturally abnormal. And here, the political dimension reveals itself. Both capitalism and its critics frequently misunderstand the true terrain of the conflict. Material production remains important, certainly, but advanced societies increasingly revolve around competition for attention rather than mere industrial output. Corporations no longer seek merely customers. They seek recurring occupation of consciousness. The ideal consumer is not merely someone who purchases occasionally. The ideal consumer becomes psychologically integrated into permanent engagement loops. But one must resist simplistic anti-capitalist conclusions. Socialist states historically consumed time no less aggressively. Bureaucratic systems devoured life through queues, permissions, inefficiency, shortages, ideological rituals, and administrative paralysis. The Soviet citizen often lost enormous portions of existence navigating institutional incompetence. Different civilization models merely produce different temporal predators. The deeper issue concerns whether individuals retain sovereignty over their own finite duration. That is the central question of Malthusian time. Who governs your hours? Who shapes your attention? Who determines the structure of your consciousness? These questions increasingly matter more than many traditional political disputes because all ideology ultimately manifests materially through time allocation. A civilization reveals its values by observing where its people are expected to spend their lives. Modern man frequently imagines himself liberated because external constraints are weakened. Yet, freedom without structure often mutates into diffusion. The individual liberated from rigid communal structures suddenly confronts infinite optionality. Every path remains theoretically available. Every identity remains theoretically constructible. Every entertainment remains instantly accessible, but infinite options create finite paralysis. A civilization drowning in abundance often produces individuals starving for orientation. This explains why disciplined individuals increasingly appear almost mystical even, within modern society. Someone capable of sustained concentration now appears extraordinary. Someone capable of silence appears unusual. Someone capable of resisting algorithmic temptation appears nearly aesthetic. The monk once withdrew physically from civilization. The modern ascetic may merely just turn his phone off. That alone now resembles rebellion. Imagine that. Malthusian time, therefore, reveals a strange irony at the heart of technological civilization. Humanity conquered many material scarcities only to discover that consciousness itself remained finite. Every innovation multiplies possible experiences while leaving it unchanged the basic structure of mortal duration. 1 minute remains 1 minute. The billionaire and the beggar both inhabit the same temporal prison. Wealth alters comfort, mobility, influence, and optionality, but neither man purchases additional existence itself. At sufficiently high levels of prosperity, the final unconquered scarcity becomes time. Hence, the obsession among elites with longevity, legacy, optimization, immortality, projects, cryonics, supplementation engines, transhumanist fantasies. Once material constraints loosen, temporal finitude becomes psychologically unavoidable. Death re-emerges as the final economic problem. Yet, perhaps the more immediate danger lies not in death itself, but in dissipation before death arrives. To waste money is unfortunate. To waste portions of conscious existence is metaphysically catastrophic. Modern civilization increasingly trains individuals to surrender life in fragments so small they scarcely perceive the transaction occurring. 5 minutes here, 10 seconds there, a notification, a scroll, a glance, a click. The centuries-old image of the devil purchasing souls through dramatic bargains may ultimately appear quaint beside systems capable of extracting lifespan invisibly through habit loops and engineered compulsion. Malthus feared famine. Modernity may instead produce a civilization suffering from abundance-induced starvation of the soul.